Hey, look at that. We're live. Welcome. It is the first Tuesday of the month. It's 9 p.m. on the East Coast. That means it's time for the Philmont Trek Talk monthly discussion about Philmont. Do we have a good name for this, Rob? What do we call this?
The High Adventure Scouting. No, I
should know better and ask you to brand it, okay?
Donnybrook.
It's the High Adventure Scouting Philmont Trek Talk. There you go. See, it's sponsored now. So
Sponsored now.
Sponsored by Gear-Report and
There we go. I've been thinking about I should pause at some point and say, and now a word from our sponsors, and then like pull this shirt off and have a Gear-Report shirt under it, and then say something and
put it back on. There you go. And Rob can do one, and I can do one. So there we go. We all do one. Shameless plug.
Awesome. Well, let's do that. When it's time to change topics, we'll pick someone who can talk about what they do instead of doing it at the end. And so let's talk about a couple things. Number one, I apologize for being a couple minutes late. I screwed that up. We have a new streaming platform, and I messed up the links. And we were actually Philip was here. Phil was in the right place, and all the rest of us I had directed to a different session, and it was the wrong one. So we figured it out. We got here before we got started. And we see a couple people starting to show up out there in the chat. Thank you for being here. The way we normally do this, the first couple minutes, we're doing some introductions and giving time for the notifications to get out there. If you're out there in the chat, give us a like or a thumbs up, whatever platform. We're on like 6 different platforms now. So whatever platform you're watching on, do something to indicate that you're there. Leave a comment so we know you're there. And then that will help the algorithms to spread it around so more people can get benefit from being a part of this discussion. So introductions. Hi, I'm Jeff. I'll be your tour guide this evening. And I run the Gear-Report.com website, and we have a pretty large Philmont section. We'll show a couple of those articles that that guy down there, Scott, wrote about Philmont. We'll talk about those as we get into our topic for this evening, which is going to be shakedowns and crew prep. And we'll get into more detail on that. And why don't we introduce our special guest first over that way somewhere? I got to remember, you point the opposite direction when you're doing this video thing. So we typically, we talk about this group being the kind of unofficial, not really official Philmont group on Facebook, because we know some people there at the ranch, but we're not part of the actual Philmont staff or anything, except for that guy who is. But this is a new one for us that Phil Ferrier's here to share a few words of wisdom with us about Philmont. And I don't know if you're going to be here the whole time. I know what we talked about was you'd pop in, say hi, and then it's up to you how much time you'd like to spend with us. But welcome. We really appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. I don't know if I'll be on the whole time, but I was planning on hanging around for a few minutes and providing any insight I can. Of course, I'm going to direct folks to check out the Philmont preparedness seminars that we put out on a monthly basis, especially if they'll be coming out to Philmont. So be sure to check out the schedule for those on our website. We've got one coming up on the 16th, I believe, where we'll be talking about base camp procedures. And I guess that kind of leads into what my job is. So I'm an associate director of camping here at Philmont. I'm on the full-time staff. I've been working here for a few years. Prior to working here at Philmont, I was at the Florida Sea Base and the Summit Bechtel Reserve. Been working seasonally or full-time for the Boy Scouts since 2002. And I help coordinate our Philmont preparedness seminars. I oversee many of our base camp departments, and then I also oversee our seasonal personnel office that helps recruit our seasonal staff. So happy to be here with you guys for a little bit.
You got a lot on your plate. Well, thank you. We really appreciate you making time here. And I do appreciate you pointing out the preparedness seminars. We try to be pretty open with people in saying, we have a lot of informal discussions. I throw a ton of opinions out. The rest of the guys are probably a little bit more fact-based, right? But there's a lot of stuff that happens here that doesn't happen on the official preparedness seminar. If you could only do one, go watch the official one. But if you can do both, hang out with us, and we'll have a little bit more of informal chat, get into more specific, individualized type questions as well. So thank you so much for being here. Let's go the other way now, and then we'll go down and around, and yeah.
All right. My name is Rob Smith. I'm the High Adventure Chair for Troop 85 in O'Fallon, Illinois, near St. Louis. Darrel and I aren't that far apart, about an hour. I'm also the purveyor of highadventurescouting.com. It's highlighting all manner of high adventure options for scouts and scouters. And down to Scott.
Thank you, Rob. I'm Scott O'Mary. I'm the Scoutmaster at Troop 259 in Plano, Texas, just north of Dallas. Been on a couple of Philmont treks, a summer trek as well as a winter adventure, as well as a couple of northern tier treks, summit experience, and trying to get to the Bahamas for sea base this summer. Those airline tickets have really rocketed in price lately, so I'm not sure if that will come up for an issue for you guys heading to Philmont, but we can chat about that if you'd like. Over to you, Darrel.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Darrel Tadsen here from the Greater St. Louis Area Council. Currently, my position with the council is the council contingent coordinators for the St. Louis Area Council. Personally, I've been to Philmont multiple times. I think it's 30 plus or whatever, 25 treks, and going to be on staff, volunteer for a couple of weeks this summer out at the Welcome Center. Hope to see a lot of you out there. Over to you, Sal.
Sal Porto, Assistant Scoutmaster, Troop 12 in Lutz, Florida, or just a little north of Tampa. Council side of the house, contingent leader, and also Philmont Ambassador, and owner of Suncoast Wilderness First Aid. There you go. Nice plug. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I try, and I apologize. Rob is sitting there feeling left out. Like, why did he show that one, but he didn't show mine?
There you go.
It's just I'm a little slow. That's all it is. So I want to give everyone their plugs here. So, okay. Well, thank you for you know what I forgot? I forgot the other part, which is we got a bunch of dirt scouts here. I am the skipper of Sea Scout Ship 4019, 4019 in Burlington, North Carolina. So, Sea Scouts can go to Philmont just like Dirt Scouts. So,
Dirt Scouts.
Yep. All right. So the topic this week is primarily on shakedowns and then how to prep your crew. So I know we talked about it before we came on a little bit. Actually, since Philip may or may not be with us for long, do you have any specific things that you want to point out that you've seen come up? Like, hey, if I could only tell one thing to the crews or two things, what do you absolutely need to do as part of your shakedown and prep process?
Sure. So the first thing that comes to mind, just off the top of my head, is don't discount the planning and preparation and crew dynamics. I think a lot of folks tend to get really excited about gear. I do too. I love gear and thinking about every little thing I'm going to tweak in my pack. But the thing that brings crews off the trail very often has to do with crew dynamics, or the other thing is a lack of physical preparation. So being familiar with the processes, being familiar with each other's personalities, and building a great team is going to lead to a better experience out on the trail, just as much as preparing your gear and everything else. So that's something quick off the top of my head.
Yeah, we appreciate that. And okay, so I've been here scrolling while you're talking about that. I wonder if I can bring this one up on the screen, because we always like to refer back to, okay, that one. back to the official documentation. And you can see here that the Guidebook to Adventure is recommending 2 shakedown weekends, and they actually have a URL. We may look at that as well. Here we go. They have a shakedown guide and duty roster and cooking methods. They got all kinds of information up here. So I would say we're gonna talk about what we do, what works for us. We'll go around the panel and get feedback, but understand there are some kind of official guidance things out there as well. One way or another, you need to, every crew's a little bit different, but you need to be sure that you show up prepared. Who wants to tackle this? This is something I saw in a discussion in the group today, was kind of this idea of, we don't want to ruin the magic of Philmont by talking about a lot of stuff beforehand. We want to show up and let them learn all the stuff on the trail. So who wants to speak to that?
Well, learning stuff on the trail or being prepared for the trail. You don't want to learn how to hang a bear bag on your first day.
No.
Make it simple. Practice the stuff you're going to do at Philmont. That way, when it comes time to do it, you don't look like the deer in the headlight, like, oh, a bear bag? What is a bear bag?
Right.
I mean, you'd be surprised. I mean, it doesn't take, you don't have to do a bear bag like Philmont does. You don't need the cable across. Find a branch, throw your bear bag over it and tie it the right way in the lark's head, wrap it around the tree the right way. Practice that. Practice doing your dining fly. Practice cooking your food. Practice setting up how fast you can put your tents up. You won't have Philmont tents, but how fast can you get out of camp? Eat the stuff you're going to have to do at Philmont. Don't wait till Philmont to get there.
Right.
Simple as that. Don't be like a deer in the headlight when the ranger says, hang this bear bag up, and you go, bear bag? What is that?
Yeah.
Right. To me, the magic is being at Philmont. There's no necessarily magic that they're going to surprise on you by your ranger or anything like that. So I agree with Sal. You do want to be prepared. And you want to be prepared to the point where you know what's going on, you know what you're doing, so you can enjoy the magic. If you're stressed out about hanging bear bags or finding your next watering hole, you're not going to be able to enjoy the magic as much, I don't think. Maybe toward the end of the trek when you get it all figured out, you might, but...
So let's talk about the questions up here. Let's tie this into what we're talking about with shakedown hikes and preparation. So I think that the question, can you bring your own tents? There are pros and cons to bringing your own tent, which you can do, or using a Philmont tent. That's a whole nother discussion. But I would say that as it pertains
Short
to
answer,
shakedowns,
yes.
yeah, as it pertains to shakedowns, the more you can work on the speed of setting up camp, breaking camp without breaking your tents, the better off you're going to be, regardless of what tent you take. You know, if you practice setting up and tearing down camp 20 times over the course of a few shakedown hikes and maybe some other things you do as a crew, even if you use your own tents and then get to Philmont and then use the Philmont tents, that practice is going to be useful to you. For people figuring out a method for not losing tent stakes. I mean, I'll tell you what, I always end a trek with more tent stakes than I started with because so many people lose them around campsites. But even little things like that, like developing methods, this is something you can work on when you're setting up and breaking camp, is how do you keep track of your stuff and not lose it? Especially if you're getting on the trail before sunrise or at sunrise, you're setting up in the dark, you're taking down in the dark. These are things that go easier if you have practiced ahead of time and aren't trying to learn it on the trail.
One of the things that I saw earlier in there was tent stakes as gutter nails, and they're perfectly acceptable. My recommendation would be that you paint them first of all with a day glow, bright orange or bright green, so you can find them in the grass or even in low light areas or at low light times. And back to tents, Philmont tents are totally adequate. The price is right. They come with the fee. Okay, couple of pounds, but you break it between the two tent mates, and it's very manageable. but I would say even as whether it's an official shakedown overnight, if you're just doing a training hike and you want some weight in your pack, put your tent and your dining fly in there. And when you stop, set your tent up. So the stop takes, 20 minutes longer than what you want. But practice that putting it up, taking it down. Um, you know, so you're familiar with it. I mean, it's not a race, but you want to be efficient in what you're doing. So carry them with you for added weight, and set it up when you stop and say, hey, this is going to be a pack soft break, and this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, that's good. And that's something you need to talk about before you hit the trail for your shakedown, because I can tell you that the first shakedown for last summer's trek, and I was a guest of this crew. So the first time I met them was at the shakedown, and we're on the trail, and I suggested, hey, when we take this break, does anyone want to set some stuff up? Yeah, I want to see how fast you guys are. And the one guy looked at me and said, what are you talking about? I can't. Like, well, no time like the present to learn. Here, I'll help you. And he's like, no, you don't understand. I have a bag of rocks in my pack. I didn't bring gear. He literally went to like Home Depot and bought a big bag of river rocks. They were gorgeous, little, polished. They were really nice. But instead of carrying camping gear, it's like, yeah, okay. You can't spring that on someone if they don't have their tent with them.
And to the magic, let the magic happen. I personally, like to let it happen. I tend to see over the years, how do I want to gracefully say this? The adults tend to over-engineer, over-analyze, the whole thing, and they take it out with the crew, and we're 2 minutes behind schedule, and you're a half a pound overweight and so forth. It's all going to work out, as long as you're not ridiculous in what you're doing. But let the magic happen, and see, and let the kids lead, because they're gonna surprise the heck out of you when they face a challenge, and you step back and say, crew leader, what are we going to do? And work with them on that standpoint. And when I say crew leader, I think at this point, we're what, 4 months out? You should have, I believe, your 3 youth leadership positions in place and working. I mean, let the crew leader do his job starting now. The worst thing you can do to them is, you get to Philmont and you get through the welcome center and you meet your ranger, and here's your crew leader, and this is the first time, he's really led the crew. And same way with the chaplain's aide and the Gia. Speak with them about what their responsibilities are, and when you're on your training hikes, maybe you want to say a prayer before you start and a prayer of thanksgiving when you finish. Or any meal that you may have along the way, and practice some of the low impact or leave no trace principles for the Gia. But those positions should be in place and designated and being practiced right now on all your training hikes, all your shakedowns, even organization of the, when you meet as a crew in the wherever you meet, the church basement or somebody's home, let him lead the discussion. I mean, he's really like the senior patrol leader.
Or she.
Pardon?
There you go. Yep.
Or she. He or
Well,
she.
this is true. I'm not generally PC, so.
So at this point, let's say that there's someone out there listening who has not done a shakedown hike yet. What would you lay out? Let's say they're a July trek. What give me a schedule for them. Like, what should they be doing over the next couple of months? And who wants to tackle this one?
I will. I'll do it.
Okay.
I'll start it. If you're going in July, let's see, this is March, April, May, June, July. You got 5 months left. You need to hike at least 4 to 5 times. What I would do if you have the time to do it, look at the hiking merit badge. bingo. Do the hiking merit badge and start with low weights and work your way up to the 20 miler with a full pack. Depending where you live, you can do it. I'm not a big fan. I know a lot of people out there are fans of doing stadium climbing and building climbing. That beats your feet up doing concrete. I really hate doing concrete. I rather do long distance in a forest than doing concrete steps. And when Darrel goes back to doing a crew leader, how I do mine is I set up the training hike. And once we get there, I give him the map and say, okay, go for it. Goodbye. Have a good day. Call me when you need me. So I'm always the caboose. So if you want to find me, I'm in the back. The scouts are up front. I'm in the back and they're leading. That's what we did this weekend. They did everything. They called the breaks. They did everything they're supposed to. We treat our training hikes as a hike. Let the crew leader lead.
So I know you're running a council contingent.
Yep.
Other folks are going to be running a crew that is from their own troop where they know everyone and they have a good feel for the skill level. I imagine that those present different challenges since you don't know what you're getting as far as on the crew that you're with or any of the other crews. You probably know some of the participants, adults or youth, but you don't know all of them.
Correct.
Do you do any organized specific skill training? Like, are you doing map and compass or any like outside of wilderness first aid, like the official what's required? Are you doing any first aid stuff? Are there any other things that as the adult, and I'm not trying to cut you off, but I mean, as the adult that you're teaching before you hand things over to the youth for them to teach? Or are you just saying cover all these things?
No, what we do in our council, Phil won't like this. We have a Philmont Skills Weekend in January. It's Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. And we basically cover what the ranger teaches them. We have 6 crews. We break it up in a round robin. We have volunteers that have been to Philmont. They do basic map skills, basic first aid skills, hanging a bear bag, hanging the dining fly, water purification, how to pack a backpack. We do that on a Saturday. Saturday night, we do a trek presentation on how to pick a trek, and that's usually indoors. And by then, the trek selection weekend is usually the weekend after, so they should come prepared with some questions about a trek. So and we tell every crew leader now, if they don't have a crew leader, we tell every crew, practice all these things when you do your training hikes. Because again, 6 crews, I can't keep track of 6 crews. Mm-hmm. I keep track of 1, that's mine. The other 5 are kind of on their own. I touch base with the adult leaders, they ask how you're doing. What we're trying this year, we're actually next month and the month after that, we are actually doing a 6-man crew, everybody invited practice hike. I'm gonna see how we don't know how it's gonna work. With 66 people, we may have a very big long trail, but we don't think we get all 66 people there. So maybe we get 30, we'll be happy. But we're just that way. At least every crew can go on 2 hikes that they know of. Again, every one of my crews are a mishmash of everything. There's no troop that filled up all 12 spots, and so you get to meet your people usually in. We have a meet and greet right after summer, like in August. And then you meet if we have the crews available. And then January, we should have the crews set. And then you go from there. Again, every crew is different. This year, I have 2 crews. I have one in my crew. I have 7 boys from 4 different troops. So, but they all get together like they're supposed to. They already decided by themselves. I gave them the paperwork on crew leader. They decided who's going to be what, and before we talked about it, they already knew what was happening. So it was good. That's how I do it. That's how we do it here in Florida. Again, everybody's different. Scott's probably jumping in, waiting to tell me what I'm doing wrong.
No, not at all. You just bring up a point that kind of makes me think maybe we need to have a distinction. You mentioned you use the hiking merit badge as somewhat of a guide, but I use the backpacking merit badge as a guide. And I guess to me, the distinction is I'm using the backpacking merit badge for the Shakedown weekend hikes, the all-encompassing practicing hiking and setting camp and breaking down camp and team dynamics, all that. from the backpacking standpoint for a whole weekend, I'll use the hiking merit badge if we're just going to do a day hike for the day and we just want to do some physical fitness activities, maybe a little hiking etiquette there, but it's something maybe more local. We're just going out for Saturday and we're coming back. So I don't know if you're using that distinction or not when you're recommending what they need to do before July.
I recommend hiking because not every crew will camp every day. And if you do the hiking merit badge, you can start off slow, 5 miles, and I tell them bring your backpack like you're backpacking, but don't try to put all 40 pounds into 5 mile your first trek. Start with 20 and work your way up. By the time you hit that 20 miler, you should have probably almost a full backpack to do 20 miles. And we treat that we may do that as a camp out, but we'll do that in one, like on Saturday morning, do 10 miles, stop for lunch, set camp up, break camp down, do another 10 miles to camp again for the night. So and we still do all the backpacking, the skill training that we do at Philmont on the hiking merit badge. It's just the hiking. That way I use it. That's kind of their incentive to go to Philmont. Hey, you've done a hiking merit badge. Now the next step would be the backpacking merit badge.
Yeah, we in the groups that are the contingents that we're creating out of St. Louis, I personally am not hiking with them, and I pretty well leave it and chat with the crew advisor. The things that need to be done. We also throw in the orienteering merit badge. Literally, if a scout has completed the Philmont trek, physically he's done just about everything for backpacking, hiking, and orienteering. After the trek, really, if he does the paperwork, that's all that needs to be done for those 3 merit badges. But I leave it, and chat with the crew advisor and get them to meet with their crews, beginning as soon as we organize them, as soon as they, know who their crew is, and then they start Zoom meetings and chatting with them and working out the details. And we also encourage them, just because we don't have a scheduled hike for the entire crew or a shakedown, hike in the neighborhood, hike 2 or 3 times a day, for an hour, 2 hours, just don't wait for the 4, 5, or 6 shakedowns or training that you're going to have. Do your training on your own and build that physical capability.
Okay, good. I reshuffled the deck there on accident. Sorry about that. It's amazing. I told you, it's a new platform. I'm clicking wrong buttons all over the place. It's kind of exciting, actually. We'll let everyone see the new background that we did for this. Okay, so I think that was a pretty good overview, and I hope if anyone's out there trying to put together shakedown hikes and has any questions that weren't addressed yet in how to set those up and what you need to cover on the different hikes, go ahead, please, whatever platform you're on, put that question in there. This is intended to be interactive. So we are looking for you to ask questions so we can answer things specifically and help you solve the problems that you're having. A question that came in from Brian here.
I can answer that.
Yeah, take it.
I can tell. I would ask the question that needs to be, number one, brought up way early, like when you're talking about, hey, I want to be on this trek, and okay, here's the expectations, and here's what you're going to have to do. If you can't do that, if you can't participate in the shakedowns and be a part of this, then this may not be the right thing for you. There's other high adventure bases. Yeah. We actually have our people sign a contract. It's not my contract per se. I stole it from somebody, but they sign a non-binding contract that basically says that, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to pay everything that I need to pay. I'm going to participate in all the shakedowns, and if they don't, then we might make the choice to ask you not to go. So yeah. I don't think it's a bad thing not to keep that on the table. hey, if there's issues with the person, if they're not participating, that's part of the crew dynamic, and you can't count on them if they're not going to be there.
So,
And
so
I would-
Rob, you may have
I would-
3, 4, 5 shakedown hikes. Is it all or nothing with you guys, or can you miss some?
No, I think the majority is what we usually indicate, and we don't usually have that many shakedowns. Usually it's 2, 3, depending on the group. Last year I had 2 because I had 17-year-olds who have trained 2 other times to go to Philmont, so they knew what they were doing. They'd been to Northern Tier. But this year they started, and I think they have three shakedowns this year for our crew. So you got to put forth an effort to to actually be there. You can't be at everything, but throw me a bone.
To Brian's comment over there and his follow-on comment, I think you need to work through and find out if it is really a can't or won't.
Right.
Everybody's got excuses and reasons, and some that Brian points out: schoolwork, brother's birthday, death in the family. Yeah, those are kind of hard to deal with and so forth. But if it's a won't, that he won't participate, then I think the decision is pretty clear.
Yeah. All right.
This is a long one here. I'm going to go ahead and put it up here. I was trying to read it ahead before I put it up there, but it was too long and I got lost. So more than about 6 words in a row, you start to lose me. Live at the start of the AT, considering 15-mile weekends in order to work on the backpacking marriage. We're concerned that the distance elevation change would be greater than we do daily at Philmont. Would you suggest the harder shakedown weekends or pulling the distance elevation gains back in line? Well, something that you're probably not going to replicate most places in the U.S. is the effects altitude. So you may say, well, we're doing more than we're actually going to do at Philmont. Are we overdoing it? But then you throw the impact of that altitude on top of the stress of travel to get there, the excitement. People probably aren't going to have slept well for a few nights getting out there and in base camp, and the trek's going to be harder than you expect, I think. Anyone else?
Base camp's at 6,500 feet, so I certainly agree with you, Jeff. and I'm curious what section of the AT you're hiking on, because we have quite a bit of elevation change here at Philmont between 6,000 and 12,000 feet.
Yeah,
I'm guessing in Georgia, since he says it at the start of the AT, so that would, I don't know.
Well, there's really not a lot of elevation. Altitude, I should say, not elevation, altitude on the Appalachian Trail, especially to start there. So I'm not sure they're going to be able to mimic what you're going to see at Philmont there. I would say that at this point in March, you should be doing those elevation changes for sure, getting your crew up and ready. If it's your first shakedown in March, maybe you don't want to do that one, your first one out. Maybe you want to work something a little bit flatter and work on more skills as opposed to introduce elevation as a next shakedown.
Yeah, has anybody ever came off the trail and says, "Oh, I've overtrained for Philmont"? I don't think so.
I didn't.
No, you can never overtrain for Philmont. I mean, come on. Simple as that. Maybe that should be a survey question, Philip. Have you overtrained for Philmont?
As long as you're not injuring anybody, yeah, I don't disagree.
Okay, let's see what Chris says here. But was someone saying something?
Yeah, I was going to say the next couple of questions, and I see you posted it. Maybe Philip would chime in on this. When are summer meals going to be posted? Allergies. What is I know it's on a limited basis, Phil. But what can Philmont do for food allergies?
Yeah,
And
happy to
when will meals be
address some of
posted?
these.
I know it's probably a month or two out, but
Yeah, so on the first question, recommended food replacements. So actually, typically when we publish the menu, we provide some suggestions for common allergens in the menu of items that could be replaced. If you didn't see the last preparedness seminar about food and cooking, I would encourage you to check that out because we walk through the process of that meal replacement. We're actually about, I don't, we haven't announced this particularly yet, so maybe this is an interesting little tidbit to get out there. But we have introduced a new section in the Philmont registration gateway where we will allow crews to review the menu in the gateway and then select special foods for each member of their crew and what they're replacing it with. And it will print packing slips so that you can organize those special foods, because we understand there's been a lot of confusion around the special food process here at Philmont. So keep an eye out for that. It's not quite ready yet. For the most part, it's developed. What we're actually waiting on right now is to get that trail food in hand. We don't like to publish the menu until we have the food here at Philmont. Just a good example of why we do that. So we ordered a bunch of food that was shipping from, I think, a company in California. And it showed up in Albuquerque to our food distribution warehouse for one of the providers that we use, and it showed up all where it will expire before our summer season even starts. So we had to send all of that food back to the company. So and that may mean we have to find a replacement for that item in our meals or those items. So that's the reason why it takes so long for us to get that menu out. We'd love to have it out sooner. We just want to make sure that the food is in hand and packed before we do. Typically, we will say around May 1st is the goal. And I know that's a little late, but for some of you who are trying to plan a little further ahead, but that's usually what the goal is early May for that menu to get out. So keep an eye out for information on that special food process in the gateway, and for the menu to be coming out over the next couple months. Does that answer all those questions?
When are you going to bring back pemmican bars?
Just for you. Well,
hey,
that really
jalapeno squeeze cheese has made its way back in and out over the years too. So.
Yeah.
We had that last year. That was good.
What about the sriracha peanut butter?
Squeeze cheese and squeeze cheese.
You mean this?
Yes.
Yeah, that.
I was pretty upset that was not out there last year.
It was. Our swap boxes were filled with it, so it's a souvenir now.
I had a scout bring home a Ziploc bag full of it.
Oh yeah,
Was
that was good stuff. I ate it. Yeah,
I'd have been all over that.
You showed?
That was the sriracha peanut butter.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I want to tie this. We love answering the questions, and please, if you have specific questions, even if it doesn't relate to shakedowns or crew prep, feel free to ask them. We may group them and come back to them later. But I'd like to kind of tie this meal planning back to the shakedown. So how much do you guys do for people on a regular diet who are just going to eat whatever's issued? What do you do for shakedown food? For people who need like a vegetarian diet or have allergy restrictions, how are you advising people in your crews? So when you're setting up your shakedowns, are you just having them bring whatever they want, or are you trying to get something together in preparation for the actual trek? So who's going first here?
I
Sal?
got it. Okay. I'll do it. Okay. So you'll go second. Okay. If we're doing an overnight camp out, I try to replicate Philmont from breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's pretty easy to do. And I'll know ahead of time who my food allergy people are. And we go over the process, or if they don't like a certain thing, if they're a vegetarian, then I don't eat meat, so I have to supplement all my junk. So I work with that scout or adult and say, you have two options of how you're going to replace your food at Philmont. You can do the meal replacements or just do swap boxes and trade off. So we tried to do the same thing for our practice hikes or practice shakedown, breakfast, lunch, and dinners, Philmont food. If you're a vegetarian or something like that, go ahead and bring your own, because you can have your own at Philmont and then go from there. So the question is, can you maintain this vegetarian diet with Philmont food? Not if you don't without replacement, it would be kind of hard because you're not going to get enough protein probably if you're just using swap box swaps. You're going to have to bring your own.
A lot of peanut butter out there.
A lot of peanut butter, yeah, but you get tired of 7-8 days of peanut butter. You kind of get tired of it. Me personally, I bring my own stuff and I don't use the meal replacement bags. I'll just carry extra stuff myself or trade off. You can always trade a beef jerky for peanuts all day long.
Oh, and I think the people who have allergy issues or food issues or vegetarian, I suspect from my experience, they already know, what they can eat and what they can't, and what they typically end up having to substitute on previous scout outings when they prepare food as a patrol. What do they do with that? The menus help. Once they're out, they can figure out what they can and can't have and what they like or don't like, and they probably already have a pretty good repertoire of replacement meals or food already in line.
Right. It doesn't help for this current shakedown season right now before 2022, but if you're working on 2023, and maybe Phil can speak to this, usually at the end of your season in Philmont, you have some leftover food that you can actually purchase. You want to tell everybody a little about that?
Yeah. So keep an eye on the Tooth of Time Traders website. Due to the record-setting season that we had this past summer, we didn't have a whole lot left over and all the supply chain issues that we've been encountering. So right now, we don't have much. We're selling a tiny little bit, I believe, just here on the ranch to folks who come to the store in person. We don't have enough to do online sales, but keep an eye on that. If you're coming in 2023 or 2022, sorry, we probably don't have much. You can always look at our old menus to replicate a lot of this stuff. A lot of what we put in our menus is pretty readily available from a grocery store or even the specialty food store or something like that. But certainly keep an eye out on the top website if we're going into 2023 for leftovers from the 2022 season. We'll usually put those up for sale. And of course, we had a ton left over after 2018 and 2020 due to the cancellations. But yeah, most of that has dried up or expired or sold at this point.
I just threw mine away last year, so from 18. I can't add anything from what Sal said because that's exactly what we do is base it on Philmont's menu, and I got pretty much everything on Amazon and at Walmart, and packed it into bags just like Philmont does, two people per. So worked out pretty well. I did that this weekend with a beginner backpacking 12 and 13-year-olds, and it worked out great. They love the food. So,
and for notwithstanding allergies and food issues and so forth, but about the third or fourth day, my experience is they'll almost eat anything.
Yeah. I think this question about how difficult it is for someone with a peanut allergy, you probably have more specific. I mean, my kind of, I don't have a peanut allergy, but my thought is it depends on how severe it is. I know people that if I eat a peanut and then hike, and then later in the day they move my trekking pole and touch the area that got a little peanut oil on it, they'll have issues. they're going to have a problem because there are a lot of nuts in lots of things that go through the food. They're going to have to be a lot more careful. If it's more mild than that, like they just can't eat them, it's probably going to be easier to manage. What do you say, Scott?
Yeah, I have a mild peanut allergy, as you described, and no problem with me being around other people eating it. I just made sure that I teamed up with a scout that had a different issue food-wise than I did. He couldn't eat pork, for example. I couldn't eat peanuts. So we would share the bag, and he'd get all the peanuts, and I'd get all the pork products out of it. And it worked out fine. I was a little concerned before I hit the trails. I just packed a few extra Cliff Bars in my pack just in case the food didn't work out, but it was not an issue at all.
Okay.
We had an issue one year where it was severe enough that the crew had to take an extra stove and pot to cook the individual's meals in. They couldn't even share that.
I've seen some discussion in the group about people with allergies severe enough that was the recommendation when they called and spoke to whoever they spoke to at Philmont. They were told, if it's that bad, then plan on cooking separately. And I would say, again, tie it back to what we're talking about this month. If that's what you're going to do on the trail, do that in your shakedowns as well. So then they can sort through, what stove they're using, what process are they using, does is the assigned cook on the duty roster. That's something I want to talk about as well, is when you ask your crew leaders to start using a duty roster. Is it on the first shakedown? Is it on the last shakedown? Somewhere in between. Let's get to that next. But, if someone's allergies are severe enough that they have to do their own food prep, then what does that do to the duty roster? It's easier to sort these things out ahead of time than, at 6:30 in the evening when everyone's tired because you made a wrong turn and let them keep hiking the wrong way for a while, and you're late getting into camp, and now you're trying to figure all this stuff out. Sort it out on the shakedown. So it's less stress when you get there.
Another tie-in for the shakedown as well. So if you have someone who has a fairly severe allergy, they should have an EpiPen. And the shakedown is the time to teach the rest of the crew how that EpiPen works. It shouldn't be when you get here to Philmont. And remember that that participant who has that allergy should have that EpiPen on them in base camp so that it can get checked by the medical recheck staff in its original packaging. Any fast-acting medication, inhalers, EpiPens, things like that, make sure you've got it all in original packaging so you can show that to the infirmary.
And everybody on the crew needs to know where that EpiPen is. Yes.
Yeah, I would say that's something you can do on shakedowns as well. Something I like to do, for example, is in one of the mesh pouch on the back of my pack where it's kind of see-through. The thing that's up against the back here and visible is a Ziploc that has some medical cheat sheet stuff, some Wilderness First Aid cheat sheet, and I have pre-filled one, the soap form for me, like the stuff that isn't going to change. I'm not predicting how I'm going to be injured because I'm pretty creative. Who knows how I'm going to hurt myself? I leave those blank, but I fill in the things I already know. Just pre-fill it so it's less to worry about in a high stress situation. I'm telling them on that first shakedown, here's where I'm putting this. If I have an EpiPen, here's where I put it, along with the other emergency stuff. Like, this is where the toilet paper will be. So I want all of that stuff to be sorted ahead of time so we know how to hike well together. All right. Another question. I've got a couple questions I'm not ignoring. I'm going to come back to later. But this one I wanted to go ahead and say I made this.
Because you've got the shirt on.
What's that?
Because you've got the shirt on. That's why.
I thought you said skirt. I was like, this is
Oh,
a
I
waist
can't see
up.
down
How
that
did you
far.
know
Yes.
that? Yeah.
I've got the advanced live. I can see below.
I actually don't know if I would be able to sell these with the two Philmont specific brands on. I know someone who makes shirts who would be happy to make some. I just don't know if it'd be like legal or whatever to do that. I don't know. Shelly, send me a note. Let me know if we can do that. I don't know. But because I happen to know one of the bosses is watching. So that would be interesting to farm that out to someone to make some of these, or maybe someone wants to send Ashley a note or Luke at the Tot and say, hey, can you make these? That'd be cool. I'm not even going to ask for royalties on the idea. Okay.
I have access to that process.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
All
Darrel
right.
can make anything.
So let's see. I want to get back on something we hadn't talked about. Anything else we want to talk about? Things that you are sure to cover in the shakedown process that someone who's not been through this needs to know before we move on to some other crew prep stuff.
One thing that one of my crews did, and it was quite effective, the advisor and the crew leader got together, and in one of the second, third, or fourth hikes, they planned a fake injury just to see how the crew would react and function. And it was amazing. There were some that had no idea, and there was a couple. The report I got, there was a couple that had been through the Wilderness First Aid class and jumped right in and took charge of the situation. And that was an interesting insertion in the shakedown to get some thought processes going and some real life situations.
Yeah, I like that. That's a great idea. All right, a couple things I wanted to be sure we don't miss. One of the great functions of the shakedown hikes is testing specific gear to be sure that it's going to work, especially if you're like me and you're always pushing for light and less.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to get out there and realize you went too light and took too little. As much as I always push for don't take it if you can get away with not taking it, don't carry it if you don't have to. You can get in trouble doing that. So one of the major functions of the shakedown hikes is figuring out what gear just isn't going to cut it so that you can be sure you have the appropriate stuff to take with you.
Mm-hmm.
And try to get gear that does double duty.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
One of the challenges this time of the year is you may have to take gear on your shakedown hikes just for warmth and survival that you wouldn't necessarily be taking with you on Philmont. So you have to make some adjustments every time you go.
Yeah. And speaking of gear, because that's that's my sweet spot. That's where I'm comfortable is talking about gear. Something we did in 2017, we didn't do this last year because it was a different crew, but we actually came into the scout hut and we set tables out. Each person got their own table. And we went through kind of like the shakedown that the ranger does, where they will say, okay, now show me your rain gear. And we did that. And we said, don't put anything back in your pack, take it out, set it out on the table. Everyone showed it. But then we talked about if everyone looked around, and this is as a crew, we were checking each other. Like maybe on rain gear, someone looked over and said, oh, that's a nice little plastic poncho you have there. That's not what you're taking, is it? And then we can make suggestions to each other. Or, wow, it's awesome that we have such, fans of cutlery in this crew, but everyone doesn't need 3 pocket knives. As a crew, you can have some discussions about, duplicate items and maybe items that aren't appropriate to take in the backcountry to begin with. And I'd rather
gear
figure that
shaming
out
them,
before.
Jeff.
Gear shaming,
Yes.
it sounds bad when you say it that way, but we can also show examples, highlight the people who are doing things well.
Yes.
And say, you know what, Sal would be proud of that chair. Oh, that was gear
Man,
shaming,
that
wasn't it?
That was
Yes.
gear shaming.
Yeah.
I do like your
Chair
note
is essential
about
gear. Chair is essential gear. So
Chair's essential gear.
I do like your note about duplicated items. I think that is probably the biggest place for weight savings when I see crews here. Everyone's got their own first aid kit, everyone's got their own multi-tool, everyone's got their own giant tube of toothpaste, whatever it may be. I think that's the place where a lot of crews can can lighten the load a little bit is by having gear shared amongst the whole crew. And it's outlined that way in the Guidebook to Adventure, which, by the way, will be in logistics tomorrow, packing all of the crew packets to be mailed out over the next couple of weeks. So tomorrow we'll be stuffing envelopes. So keep an eye out if you're coming in 2022.
Nice.
Now, I'll just add, Jeff, I wish I would have taken that advice on having a shakedown to the shakedown. We had one young man who joined us from another troop that we assumed he had the right stuff and he didn't. And we found that out the second day with all the rain. So that was probably one of the things that I wish we would have done. I'd tell everybody, yeah, that's probably the best idea I've heard, and I'm going to tell that to my crew that's going this year. So,
contingents that I've led, we usually have, the entire contingent get together a week before we leave, and bring your backpack packed as if you were going, and we go through the shakedown for the appropriate, the inappropriate stuff. And when you say share or double duty, do I need a jacket and a rain jacket or a poncho? Maybe a piece of clothing can cover 2 items or 2 areas, long sleeve shirt type of thing, zip off pants, lighten your load, make that item do dual duty for yourself.
So one of the really neat things, I actually had a parent push back in 17 when we did this about, my kids go see all this stuff everyone else has, and then this is going to cost me hundreds of dollars when they insist they have to have all this other stuff. What came out of that? More people decided to leave expensive gear at home, and I remember several items where as we're looking and people hold stuff up, it's like, wait a second, what is that? And we get to look and it's like, oh, wow, we all spent $50 on this item. You have a $2 item from the dollar store. We actually like that better. It's a great way, if you do it early enough, it's a great way to help people figure out how do you get away cheaper and not, make this such a barrier to entry that going on the trail has to be super expensive. That all of us are smarter than any one of us, and we can really help with ideas if we openly talk about stuff. So last summer, the crew that I went with chose not to do this. I think they did kind of see it as gear shaming, and also I think they didn't want me to get on a roll with gear because I won't stop talking about it. So we get out on the trail, and honestly, we had a scout that couldn't hack it. And he just gave up one day at 4 miles into a 8-mile hike, said, nope, I'm done, and sat down. And that was it. We were there for 4.5, 5 hours before we got to move. And we had to carry all of his stuff. And it was a bear. So he went back to the infirmary. A few days later, we were surprised when he rejoined us on the trail. We said, hey, man, while you were back there, you went through your pack and got rid of some stuff, right? Oh, yeah, I absolutely did that. Okay, let me see your pack, and pick it up. And it's like, this weighs twice as much as the next heaviest pack in the whole crew. They tried to go through it with him, and he was arguing for everything. So they said, all right, you go sit with Mr. Jeff and he'll take care of you. I took 25 pounds of stuff out of his pack.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
And we were fortunate that a kind soul at the Apache Springs trading post put it in a box and shipped it back to base camp for him, because he wasn't going to make it the rest of that trek.
Don't tell.
I'm certain. Hey,
don't plan for that. Do not plan for that. That does not happen.
Yes, and I understand why you say that, because you
didn't hear
can't
that
plan
before.
for that, but also, and I hate to say it, because I know that people like Philip are going to cringe, like, no, don't set that expectation. But some of the most helpful people who will go the extra mile that I've ever met have been staff across the board at Philmont. Certainly don't count on that. Do your job ahead of time to be sure your crew is prepared, so you don't need to ask them to go the extra mile. But yeah. So anyhow, I was afraid that mentioning it might get the guy in trouble for doing it, but at the same time, he saved our crew because I'm telling you, if that scout hit the trail with all that extra stuff and did to us what he did early in that trek, slowing the crew down, and I was afraid someone was going to help him off a cliff somewhere. So that person who stepped up saved the trek for several people in our crew, and that was awesome and amazing. But we wouldn't have been in that position had we gone through his pack beforehand and realized Mama packed it, and he had 4 flashlights, and one of them had 3 D-cell batteries in it and 3 spares.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, there were lots of things like that. Those are the type of things that we talked about. In one ear, out the other. He didn't care. If you didn't go through the bag, you wouldn't find him. So, oh my goodness. Is someone reading this super long note over here?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Hey guys, I think I'm probably going to hop off for the night, but I appreciate you having me, and hopefully I can hop back on some other time.
Yep.
Yeah, we'd love to have you anytime.
Anytime. And we'll see you in June. We'll track you down.
All right. Sounds good.
All right.
Good night.
While you're processing that long comment, I do want to bring up a point on the shakedown heights to make sure you practice your cadence of the day. And I say that from the perspective that a lot of crews go to Philmont for the program. Yes, there's some people that want to hike all day long for 100 miles. I would say most crews are there for the program. If you want to hit the program, if you want to hit all the programs you can, you really need to get up early in the morning and get ready to hit the trail right at sunrise, eat breakfast on the trail so you're that much further along, and practice that cadence on your shakedowns. Set those expectations for the crew. And that's a hard, controversial subject to broach with some scouts on a 3-day weekend or a hike weekend when they want to sleep in till 9 or 10 o'clock before they get hiking.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was kind of knee deep in reading this long comment, and I think I may have missed part of that, but I think to the extent that you want to practice the way you play, right? So you want your shakedowns to mimic the actual trek as much as realistic, and one of those things really is getting used to getting rolling early, because at Philmont, especially if you go later in the summer, it gets hot and dry, and it can make a meaningful difference in how much water you have to process, whether that is through a filter, chemical treatment, both, however you choose to do your water. If you sleep in and go later in the day, you're likely going to have to process 20 to 50 to 100% more water, because people will be sweating more, drinking more water on the trail. And that takes time. It takes effort. It's going to slow you down even more. So getting up and going quicker on the trail is going to help you a lot. So practice that on your shakedowns. All right.
And dodging those monsoons for sure.
Yeah, that's the other thing is you run into the storms. All right, I'm going to synthesize this for you. Eliminate duplicates. Eliminate duplicates. Go lighter.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I think that's what he's saying here. Too much weight. Yep. All right.
Yeah, I would talking about getting on the trail, and I guess I've never had anybody in my crews, even the ones we didn't get to go, that I kept pushing on them. We need to get really good at taking tents down and taking our stuff down, and hey, we're not going to eat breakfast until everything's packed, or we're going to get on the trail and eat, and those kind of things. So I guess I've never had any problem with with that, but I just set that expectation. This is why, and we need to get the why we're going to Philmont instead of going to Colorado and backpacking in the mountains. There's all these activities. That's what we're paying for.
Yeah, I always tell my crew that we're up at 5, and that's not negotiable. Simple as that. That's part of the deal. You're up at 5, you're gone by 6. If you can't do it, then I suggest you not go to Philmont. Simple as that. That's a non-negotiable. And most of the scouts.
I'm not getting up at 5.
No, I'm with Sal. I'm getting up at 5, but what's hurting me is I have a huge addiction to coffee, and it's really rough to postpone my coffee for an hour and a half on the trail before we can stop for breakfast.
No, you get up at 5, you make the coffee first, and will you drink your coffee while you're taking down your tent?
Oh no, we're gone by 5:30. We're gone.
Oh, well, I can drink my coffee while I'm taking down the tent. Trust me.
Okay, so something people
Next
can
question.
practice on their shakedown, if they choose to, is the method I do for coffee is I put I have my water bottle, my smellables bottle. I put the coffee in it. I put a sugar packet or two, which I don't do the rest of the year, but out there somehow I do sugar and creamer in there as well, and sometimes a cocoa packet. Shake it up, run it up in the bear bag at night. It all dissolves, and it is awesome by morning time. And it's a little cold, but you know what? I don't drink cold coffee at home, but it's awesome on the trail.
I took Jeff's idea, and I worked out a really good recipe to where I had 2 scoops of instant coffee, 3 sugars, 3 creams, and I did the same thing, and it was 1.5 pounds of coffee. I don't think I would bring next time. I think I would just wean myself off while I was there, because that was just a lot of. But it was good though. Thanks for the idea, Jeff.
Yeah, sure.
I'm the coffee snob, I guess. I do the jet boil with the French press. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I gotta have my coffee in the morning. That's my why I'm sitting in a chair.
I drink a Yeti cup plus every morning, and I think I would probably just not do it next time. I just not have to bother with it.
Yeah, I tell my kids, don't even start drinking coffee because I do 2 of these a day, and I'm still drinking it right now, and it's dark out. But
So if we swing that back to shakedown hikes and prep, are the adults on your crew doing the same thing for coffee?
Yes.
Are they all bringing their own different apparatuses? And
no, the adults, we all talk together and figure out who does coffee and who's bringing what.
Right.
Okay. We divide it up. Who's bringing the coffee? Who's bringing the jet boil? I usually bring the jet boil and the coffee, and I tell people if you want any additional sweetener or milk or whatever you want, you bring that. You carry that. I'll take care of the coffee and the jet boil. You bring the rest. That's usually how I do my cruise. Hey, there was a question back there about tents. Somebody put a question about tents.
Yeah, it was bring your own tents or use Philmont tents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was one of them that I was going to talk to later because I do want to get through our agenda.
Okay.
And
it's 10 o'clock already.
I know. We're running over, which is pretty typical.
It's only 9 o'clock for me. I don't know what's wrong with you guys. You're in the wrong time zone. So
there's one question there. Any of you do Rayado? And I don't think any of us have done Rayado.
Have not.
No.
I can spell Rayado. And I have walked along the Rayado River. But that's it.
Is lightning intense on the switchbacks? It's intense anywhere at Philmont. Yeah. It isn't limited to the switchbacks.
This is a whole nother discussion here on cooking stuff. Something I'll tell you, Philip, who was with us from Philmont staff, and his counterpart, who is in charge of all the backcountry stuff, we talked about cooking method stuff, and things are changing at Philmont. And I think you're not going to see a lot of official guidance changes this summer, but the attitude of, do it this way, very rigid, is not there anymore. They're very open. As long as it works and isn't dangerous, they're open to however people want to do things. So especially if you show up, you know how to use your stuff, you're likely to be given more leeway than in several of the last years.
I would agree with that. If you can demonstrate, that you're proficient in it and that it's not, negative to the environment or whatever, or dangerous. I think they're becoming more open to it.
Yeah.
Is Philmont going to stock that kind of stuff? That's a logistics economic issue that I'm not sure scouts can step up to at this time.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to get back to our agenda real quick, and let's look at, let me share the screen, and I want to go to a specific tab if I can find it.
Just a comment that I was mentioned last year, while I was out there for 2 weeks, I got permission to leave my post for a couple of days, and I rented a vehicle, and I met one of my crews up in the Vol, which is accessible for public. And I mentioned to the crew, if they wanted to dump anything, get rid of it, trash or whatever, I'd be more than willing to take it back to base camp. And you would be surprised. No, you wouldn't. The junk that came out of those packs. Two hardbound books.
Oh my goodness!
I mean, I must have brought 25 pounds of stuff.
Yeah.
4 different merit badge books. I mean, I took a picture. I told them to put it. I had rented a Tahoe, and behind the last seat, the whole back end was full of stuff. I told them to put it on the hood, and I'd take it back, and the hood was covered.
Oh my!
Unbelievable.
So what I wanted to show here, part of the shakedown process is, the scouts are leading, and the crew leader should be doing the duty roster. But part of our job is to help them understand what tools are available and expectations for ways to manage things in the backcountry. And one of those, I think, is introducing them to the duty roster. And so at what point do you guys do that? Is it first shakedown, you do a duty roster for the first one, or do you focus on other things and incorporate that later?
We usually do it from the get-go.
Good.
Yep.
I would say, start practicing it, start using it, particularly on your overnight shakedown.
Yeah.
Maybe not on just a day hike that you're going to go out at 8 o'clock in the morning,
Right.
come back at 5, but
I usually get the crew leader to start using that as soon as we can and make sure he understands it. Most of your crew leaders, a lot of times, not always, are the older boys, been around the block enough times. They know they might have been the SBL somewhere along the way, so they understand what it is. So I guess it's a case-by-case study. Some boys need a little more help than others. But this year's crew leader, I already talked to her about it. He goes, "Oh, I got it. I already started filling it out for this year." He's already filling it out without me, so I think I'm okay.
So that duty roster is the example that you'll find on the Philmont website under the Shakedown Guide. They also have documents, the Shakedown Guide Part 1, Part 2, duty roster, and cooking methods are all available for you. It was surprising to me talking to some of the crews in base camp before, after, even some out in the field who admitted, oh yeah, we never read any of that stuff. And there's so much great information in it. And I don't agree with everything that's in it sometimes, but that doesn't mean that I don't want to read it and at least be familiar with, all the stuff. So especially if you're an adult taking a crew out there, if you haven't read through like the council and unit planning guide ahead of time, if you haven't familiarized the crew with the duty roster, if you haven't, looked through the different guidance on the cooking methods and gone through the shakedown guides, then, maybe you're doing a little bit of a disservice. Or we could spin that differently. You have an opportunity to step up and do things a little bit better to help prepare your crew a little bit better. And the earlier you learn this, the more you're going to learn on your shakedown hikes as you kind of match up the things you're doing on those hikes with the things you've read in all the prep materials from Philmont And it also gives you a chance to ask questions in our group on Facebook earlier, so we have time to get different answers for you. Tons and tons of great information out there. And we talked earlier about the idea of prepping ahead of time versus learning things when you get there. There's so many things to do in the backcountry. I personally prefer to not really be distracted by learning stuff that I could have learned at home. And I think that way with the scouts as well, that, they're going to get more out of it if they already know how to navigate, and, they're not having to learn that on the trail. So then, they have more time to enjoy the unique things that they can only enjoy there in the backcountry. All right, let's see, what else do we have here? Interesting. I don't know what that means exactly, but that brings up another topic another thing on the agenda that we need to talk about, and this is something else that Philip kind of surprised me with when we were talking last week. The idea that in a typical year, throughout the whole summer trek season, they may have a couple crews that give up and go home partway through the trek. We're done. Send a Suburban. We're done. They had 9 last year. And I don't know anything about why any of them came off the trail. It didn't, maybe there's some unavoidable things. I don't know. But I would like to think that there are a lot of prep things you can do to head that off at the pass. But the thing that surprised me that he told me was, more often than not, it's not unavoidable things like someone got injured so bad or multiple people got injured, they just couldn't continue. It's more of a mental breakdown of the crew leader was a tyrant, or the crew advisor wouldn't stop telling us what to do, and they end up with interpersonal issues. So what do you guys do to prep your crews to not have the interpersonal issues that are going to come up on the trail? How do you diffuse things before they become problems, and how do you work that into your shakedowns?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Suck it up, Cupcake. I encourage the crews to use, before they go, the roses, thorns, and buds. Even if it's just, a 5-hour day hike, at the end, what went right, what went wrong, how can we fix it? And one advisor, he whittled a stick, and it was the talking stick. And at Roses, Thorns, and Buds, you could only talk if you had the talking stick. And that seemed to work. I don't know if the crew would have had issues or not, but it's certainly a tactic or a strategy to get some of those issues on the table and discuss, and be big enough to say, hey, Bobby, you're bothering me, and Bobby saying, hey, I forgive you, or whatever. This is a certain amount, and talk to them about, this is a certain amount of what life is going to be like. When you go to work and in that office, you're not going to have everybody, holding hands and, singing Kumbaya. And I don't mean disrespect with that, but, you're going to have issues with people.
So have any of you, show of hands here, have any of you through the shakedown process, pre-trek process, identified that you had some incompatibility and invited someone to not go, or switch crews up, switch people up, anything like that? I can tell you, this past summer, we had, that crew had already cut one person who physically wasn't going to be able to hack it. There were 2 more that had to be cut. And then the third one that I already talked about, that was carrying way too much stuff, that sat down, said, I can't do it. Probably that was a learning opportunity. What I'll say about it is, if your shakedown hikes likely aren't going to be able to replicate what you're going to run into at Philmont, because initially you're going to be adjusting to the altitude, and that is going to make everything way harder. As you get acclimated to the altitude, now you're going to have something that you haven't dealt with before on your shakedowns. That is, you've been on the trail for a week or 8 days or 9 days or 10 days. Most shakedown hikes are a weekend. You don't get the personality conflicts. You don't get the just pure, I am wore out because I've been on the trail for a week and I hadn't slept right. That kind of thing that make people act in ways they wouldn't normally act. So I would say this is something that I think the more proactive people are about making sure you have a process in place for identifying what do you do when something starts to bother you, nip it in the bud early, whether it's roses, thorns, buds, or some other method. Start early. And then another suggestion that I think Philip's counterpart had suggested was consider some activities that aren't necessarily like backpacking. Like the crew could easily get together and do other things. Just go out and do some other stuff just to get to know each other better. If it's a troop that it's the people they hang out all the time, maybe you don't have to do that. But
I'm curious if, to your point about the 3-day week or the 2-day weekend, you really don't hit that wall. I'm curious if any crews out there are using like a spring break week and doing a much longer shakedown to kind of tease some of those out.
I have in the past, but unfortunately in my council, we have like 4 different counties, and each county has its own week for spring break. So if they're all in the same county, I try to do it, but I haven't done it in like 3 years because my kids are in one county. Their spring break is this week. Next county is another week. So I would love to do a spring break if we can make it up to North Georgia in 8 hours and spend 4 or 5 days up there, but just can't do it.
yeah,
One of my crew leaders last year, before it got too cold in the fall, he had a pool party in his backyard with his crew. Just meet and greet, get to know. I see one of the comments over on the side is incentives. Had one adult who always brought a pound or 2 of Jolly Ranchers. And when the crew finished a particularly tough, maybe an uphill, everybody was at the top of the hill catching their breath, drinking water. He'd walk around and hand out a Jolly Rancher to each of the kids or everybody in the crew. Hey, he called them Magic Mountain Pills. And thanks for a great job. You all did well. And I think the other thing is that the crew leader, the adult advisors, I mean, yeah, they're on vacation, but they're part of the crew, and they got to be open and honest and accepting. It's just because I'm the adult and the adult advisor, it's not my way or the highway. You got to buy into this program too, just as much as the kids do.
Right, Darrell. To your point, I've seen some crew advisors button heads just as much, if not more, than the scouts. So,
oh yeah,
it goes both ways for sure.
Yeah. And if you're a smoker, don't give it up when you get on the bus and head for Philmont. I had an advisor who did that, and on day 4 he was throwing the Coleman stove at the tree. He was so frustrated.
Yeah. To that point, I saw a comment earlier about weaning yourself off caffeine before you go. And I do cut back quite a bit on my caffeine before I get to the trip, just to help with hydration and preparation for the altitude. But once I'm up there and at the altitude, I'm pounding the coffee again. So,
Yeah,
yes,
when I hike,
I agree with the weaning beforehand, but not necessarily on the trek.
yeah, and I like coffee, and I like the taste of good coffee and so forth. But I was willing to live with a Folgers coffee in a bag or instant coffee. I was looking for the caffeine more than the taste.
And I see that Jeff has pulled up the article on altitude adjustment, altitude sickness.
I have muted myself. I was wondering why no one was responding when I said things. Yeah. Okay. So let me get back to that and keep scrolling. But I wanted to point out a couple of the different articles you wrote. So let's see, Scott, if you'll talk about this one, and then I'll go through the other ones and you can just say a couple words. The idea is I want people to know they exist. They can go read them and incorporate any of this stuff. There are some really cool things in this one and the other articles that can be incorporated into the process for shakedowns.
Oh, well, okay. I'm not quite sure how to incorporate some of the altitude prep for shakedowns other
Yeah, mainly the
than
other ones. Yeah.
hydration, really around hydration. All the other parts of this is really around. I know one of our Facebook users commented about they like to do a hike of the Great Sand Dunes in Colorado before. I guess that's before their trip to get acclimated. That's awesome, but I would kind of forewarn anybody to flying into Denver and immediately go to the mountains and go and do some very physical activity. I would kind of take it easy for that first 24
We did
hours.
that after our trek, and that was a tough place to hike in, even after we got done.
Was it? Yeah.
The Great Sand, that's a tough no matter what. So
Yeah, other than hydration, I don't know what you can do to train for altitude. And to a first time person, uh, have some plain aspirin in your first aid kit. That'll help. And hydration. Those that have trouble with it, I'm not a doctor, but one of my advisors, he used a prescription drug Diamox about 2 or 3 days before he left here in St. Louis. Started taking that tablet, and from the previous year to that year he started, it was night and day difference for him.
Interesting. I think that part of your physical preparation can help you if you do more like cardio stuff. That can help you. Something that gets you breathing heavy. I think like spend some time on the Stairmaster, something like that. I think is going to help your body get used to that kind of. It needs more oxygen than you're typically breathing in when you're sitting there casually. So your lungs get more acclimated to taking deeper breaths and having a little bit more demand on your lungs for pulling the oxygen out of it. I think you can kind of practice for that a little bit. But I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express. I'm not a doctor. None of that stuff. So, but let's see, that was not one of the articles I did want to speak to that because adults, please go check this article out. And shameless plug time. These articles are all on Gear-Report.com. It's potentially the greatest website in the world. Largely because of people like Scott and Andy, who's not here on the show tonight, and other people like that who write really cool stuff there. So let's see. And they also happen to be the sponsor of the group and the show this evening.
Haven't done an article in a long time. I need to think about one.
And if anyone cares to write anything, let me know. We're always looking for awesome new content to share. So I think this one, Scott, when we get into the time management stuff, these are things that you really can incorporate into your shakedowns, setting expectations or making suggestions for how the crew should operate so they can try things.
Right. Yeah, I
So,
think this is a series of 2 or 3 articles. One's around time management while you're on the trail. Another one is time management while you're at camp to get things all situated and ready to go so you can get out of camp as quickly as possible. I can't remember what the third one is off the top of my head, but I think there's some good tips that I've collected over the years, both from the Facebook group as well as my own experience that I kind of organized into those articles.
Yeah, and I'll try to drop a couple of those. Oh, hold on. Or maybe it won't let me. I was going to try to share the URLs in the comments, but yeah, it's not going to let me.
I
All
can
right.
see him.
Well,
I can see him.
you can. Okay, well, I'll just keep doing it over and over and over then. All right.
There's 1, 2, 3 of them so far.
Okay. So, and some of that, the duplicates you're seeing in the streaming platform is that we're going on, we're broadcasting on so many different platforms. So, like one comment's on Twitch, and another one's on Facebook, and another one is on YouTube. Is data to suggest that physical activity in hot and muggy conditions are similar to the stress altitude puts on the body. Well, there you go. There is a potential way to help yourself prep. That's good to know. Let's see. And that was, all right, that was eat when you're tired. Let's look at.
If I remember correctly, there's an introductory article that just has an overview, and then the individual articles are on at camp and then on the trail in terms of cadence and setup and so forth.
Okay, here's Introduction to Time Management. So there's another one that folks can look at to help sort out how they want to manage time on the trail. So who did you write this for, Scott? Is this for the crew advisor, for the crew leader? Like, do you want
it's really for the crew. I would say the advisors, and then just maybe pick out what they think is going to work for them and their crew, and then share that with the crew lead.
Yeah. Yeah. So you got this intro to time management on the trail. You can sleep when you're dead, which I love that title because I've been saying that for years, you know. So I like seeing that applied to Philmont. There are a lot of great things. If you go read through this, it'll really help you wrap your head around what things are going to be useful for you to learn and kind of build into your daily routines when you're on the trail to help get the most out of your time and to get the most magic, you know, which is, in my opinion, the stuff you can only do in the backcountry at Philmont.
It's not about watching the clock either. It's just, yes, there are some numbers in here and a little bit of math, but it's really just kind of set the example more than, you know, it's 5:19 a.m. We're supposed to be doing this at this time. It's not like that.
Yeah. Oh, I don't think we can replicate mini bears on shakedown hikes. Maybe we can. I guess it depends on where you are.
Raccoons are a good substitute.
Yeah.
Where I am.
Yeah. Yeah, the squirrels aren't nearly as aggressive around here as they are in many of the places in Philmont. Which, interesting aside, I really expected that some of the rodents, the mini bears, would have generationally, when we went in 22, they'd been on again, off again, and there were potentially a generation or two of critters that may not have really been around people that much. I didn't know if they'd really remember all that stuff and be as aggressive as they were. And they're quick learners, so yeah. All right, so I'm scrolling through comments here to see if there's anything else we needed to mention here. I do have a question about taking scouts to a brewery. That one. I want to
I've
call
been to
anyone
there.
out
They have
here.
free taste tests, so that's what
Yeah,
I
I don't know that I want to call out Facebook user directly because Facebook user is one of our most prolific commenters, but I'm not so sure about that one personally.
I'd say
Okay,
no.
yeah. Anything else that anyone wants to bring up about the shakedown and prep process? And then once we get past that, I want to find there were a couple things that we skipped earlier that I want to come back to.
No, I think we're good on the shakedowns. I mean, you got to do shakedowns. You can't just show up. You got to do what you got to do to get ready. Simple as that. Practice everything you're gonna try to live. You can't replicate Philmont, but do the best you can where you live. I mean, I'm in Florida. We're 10 feet above sea level. I can't duplicate altitude. So we can't duplicate it. So
the one thing, looking over my notes here, the one thing that we touched on but didn't really drive home that I have seen over and over and over and over on the trail is scouts, and often adults as well, but scouts almost universally overestimate their map and compass navigation ability.
practice.
That is something that I think can be hard to continue to focus on when the scouts are like, ugh, we've done this. We already know what we're doing. Come on.
Right.
Yeah, they could probably use more.
And I would also add to that just the topographic skills, because at Philmont, it's very easy to look at the mountains around you and figure out where you are on the map and which direction you know, even without the compass. And I think it's those skills they really need to pick up. It's hard for Sal to replicate in Florida and me in flat Plano, but the landmarks are real easy to pick out there.
Yes, they are. It's hard to do topographical maps in Florida when everything's flat. I mean, I'm sorry, we can't. We can do set waypoints and do all that stuff, but we can't do topographical until we get somewhere where we got mountains. It doesn't work. But
okay, so let's come back to that. Let's see here. We got lots of comments coming in. I'm trying to keep up here. Facebook user is our overachiever again. Is it better to use Philmont tents or take your own? This is one that I put off earlier, so I didn't want to miss it before we were
the
done.
answer is yes.
Depends.
Depends. Yeah.
Depends on the person, depends on the crew, depends on what you want to do. Everybody has their own opinion on Philmont tents. So
Sal had a great experience this last summer. I had a horrible experience. So just never know.
I require my crew to use Philmont tents. Simple as that. One less thing we got to travel with. We're traveling from Florida. Why not use them? They're included. The thing I always tell my parents is I use the excuse of the example of little Johnny Scout camped with his troop, didn't clean his scout tent out properly, had a chocolate bar wrapper in it. We didn't know about it until day 3 at Philmont. He's going to meet Smokey the Bear. Simple as that. Do I want to be that scoutmaster? Say, yeah, I was on my crew, took a dirty tent, and he met Smokey Bear the hard way. I didn't want to be that scoutmaster or that crew adult leader. Adults, I let them take the option of what they want to do. Youth do not have the option. That's non-negotiable. But again, that's me. I'm sure everybody has their own opinions on it. Well, if 12 people take into management, it'll practice the leave no trace principles. 12 one-man tents take up a heck of a lot more room than 6 Philmont tents. So there you go. There's the basis right there. You can't argue with that one.
2 thumbs up for that one.
This year, let's see, my crew has got 7 kids and 4 adults. All the kids except for one are using Philmont tents. The adults are all using Philmont tents. Simple as that.
Yeah, and I'll be the dissenter. I like
as always.
Oh well. if you do things the right way, then I wouldn't disagree with you, Sal.
I do things the right way.
It's so cute when you say that.
I know.
So I actually like taking my own tent because I know nothing's been eaten in it. And the Philmont tents, they're a little heavy. I don't like them for that reason. I don't want to have the issues that Rob had with, the decorative water feature called the rainfly that just let everything come in. I bet it looked really cool with the light glinting off of it during the day, though.
Yes, it was rainbow. It was very nice.
Yes,
Rainbow inside the tent.
Yeah, it
That's
was amazing.
bonus.
We had he must have got the bad batch. I mean, our tents last summer worked perfect. I mean, nobody complained. That was the only dry spot we had was it's inside the tents.
Yeah, all
But
four of our tents had the same problem. And I asked when I got back, I said, we had this problem. And they said, you know what? We ran out of waterproofing that day. Like,
oh, no.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I got that from two different people. I said, all right, why don't we fix that?
Yeah.
The other thing is you can't do the practice hikes with the Philmont tent. So but you can figure that out after a day.
Yeah. I think that it's a recommendation I would make. Philmont washes and retreats the tents. Mm-hmm. If you want to bring your own tents, wash them and treat them. So then even if someone ate in them before, you've gotten that stuff out. There's an option for you, potentially. But yeah, I mean, you have the option to do it however you like. Won't they replace them on the trail if needed? I suspect that even if you have your own tent and something happens, like anytime, like if you take them a broken Philmont tent at a staff camp and say, hey, can I trade this in for the spare one that you guys have here? They'll probably trade it with you. Or if it's your own tent, they'd probably let you have the Philmont tent for the rest of the trek anyway. So
yes, they will.
Yeah, they're not going to put you at jeopardy.
Right.
Yes. Voice of experience. We had a scout a couple years ago left his tent poles at the camp the morning. He didn't figure it out until that night. So he had no tent poles. So we had to go find him a tent, and we had to walk down to the closest staff camp because we were at a trail camp to get him tent. He had to carry his tent with no tent poles because he was the odd man, of course. So he had a one-man tent, so he got to carry a Philmont tent all by himself. So that was that was a learning experience. Never lose your tent poles for him.
Yeah. Okay.
Back to the one is, Philmont tents are too heavy. I mean, compared to what your option would be, I don't see it much more than maybe a couple of pounds. And
we have our REI tents.
And 2 pounds is a chair, but is it really that big a deal?
We have REI tents in our backpacking, our backpacking tents for our troop, and they're just a little less than the Philmont tents, 5 something.
Yeah.
Philmont tents are just over 6, so it was really a kind of a wash. That's why we decided to go with the Philmont tents. So
yeah. My tent's 2 pounds. Yeah. So for me, it's a big deal. For other people, it depends on what else you would take. And also, what's that?
Is that a 2-man tent, Jeff?
I consider it more like I'm 1.5. Like, I mean, you've met me. I'm not little.
I know, but
it's not big enough for me with another full-size person.
Right.
If you split it up, you're at 3 pounds or so. So that's not too much more. So
yeah. I think personally put a little bit more weight on some of the young kids that you can't keep up with anyway, and let them carry the Philmont tents. No big deal. But the adults, personally, again, it's more important for the adults to trim weight because we're going to be the slow ones that are holding the crew up, making them miss program. We're the ones that are more likely to get too tired trying to keep up. And then when we're fatigued, slip and twist an ankle or break a leg or something. For adults, aggressively trimming weight is more important, in my opinion, than it is with most of the scouts. And I think here's something: challenge all the adults going on your shakedown hikes to change the way they look at this. Normally, scout leaders start out with their kids when they're cubs, and they go up through Weeblos, and then they come up through scouts, and it's been ingrained in their psyche forever that they're taking care of the scouts, right? They're the last line of defense. They're responsible. So then they want to carry spares of everything and all the extra stuff just in case it's needed. Well, you do that at Philmont, your pack's going to be twice as much as the kids who are 3 times as fast as you anyway. Next thing you know, you have a huge speed difference that causes problems. So I'll challenge the adults, get out of the mindset of you have to be the backup for everything. Let the scouts carry the stuff. See if you can strategically get them to have the faster people carry a little bit more of the crew stuff so that you balance the speeds a little bit better. But the adults absolutely don't need to be like, oh, well, I'll just carry that in case someone needs it. No.
Yeah.
You carry as little as possible.
And I totally agree with you. And back to the issue of Philmont, if you split it between the 2 tent people, the tent buddies, what are you carrying? A half a pound extra than what you normally would? What Rob says is, is REI tents.
We split it up, and we had, 3 pounds a piece, and it was, with my tent mate, it was fine. I mean, I didn't mind it. So,
yeah, it's all situational. Depends on who you are. If you can carry extra and keep up, then carry whatever you want. If you are going to slow the crew down or be at increased danger of injuring yourself or someone else because you're carrying heavy stuff, then go for lighter stuff. If you're like me and you've had 5 knee surgeries, go as light as you can to try to prevent a blowout on the trail. If you don't need to do that, you don't have to do that. Okay, we're getting close to 2 hours, so we need to wrap this up. I'd like to thank the panel for being here. I think this is one of the best discussions we've had. This feels, from my perspective, to have gone pretty smoothly. I attribute that to the esteemed panel of experts that somehow keep agreeing to come on and do this with me. So thank you. I really appreciate that. If you guys have anything else from our agenda that you wanted to talk about, now's your chance. I'd also like to say you missed the last call for questions if you're out there in the comments, but check us out on the Facebook group. Let me see if I can pull that one up real quick here. That is going to be Philmont Trek Talk, Prep News and Info. And you'll see the fancy banner image there if you're trying to make sure you found the right group. Definitely go check us out there. You can ask questions and leave comments and post your pictures and all that kind of good stuff over in that group if you haven't found us there already.
And I'm going to go in and condense this down to a couple podcast episodes for my site too. So
sweet.
I'll take out some of the stuff and make it to where it's not 2 hours.
Yeah. I felt like at one point we were at 45 minutes and I was I prematurely was patting myself on the back like, oh yeah, we're going to finish at about an hour this time.
Nope.
Should have known better. But I think that should be our goal for next time. Let's set our agenda and hold it to 1 hour, and that'll make it more digestible for people and make Rob's job easier. He won't have to cut up. Yeah,
that's all right. I'm going to be in a hotel room Thursday doing nothing but this, so that's good.
Yeah. Okay, excellent.
Okay.
So, any parting words from anyone on the panel? Now's your chance.
Anybody not ready?
I gone.
All right.
Ask your crew leader.
That's right.
Yeah. Hey, until next time. We'll see you on the trail.
Yep.